Well guys, you can see that this doesn't say Yamaha, Kawasaki, or anything else Japanese. This is actually a bike that's different to us. We don't work on a lot of overseas stuff that isn't Jap bikes, you know.
Right.
Especially something from, I believe these are UK?
Great Britain.
Great Britain. Britain, UK, United,
same thing.
Shit, different day. But yeah, this is a 2002 Triumph Daytona 955i.
For injection, fuel injection?
I believe so. But yeah, these bikes, it's a triple. You'll know different models like the Speed Triple. That's what they're formerly kind of known as. Don't quote me on that, but yeah, this thing, I picked it up. I'd say it was a damn good deal, but you turn the key, hit the start button, nothing happens. So when that happens, kids, there's a lot that can really be wrong with it. It's really hard to trace down where to start from when diagnosing something like that. So like what me and Spike did, who's behind the camera, we grinded forums for like hours on end. I mean, literally in my sleep, I was just like literally forums scrolling through. But we jumped the solenoid and we got the motor to crank over. So we knew it was, we know that the starting system was working. It just wasn't getting power there. Mm-hmm. And there was no neutral light, nothing on the dash. It just physically lit up with color. It just powered it up, and you had nothing. Checked power by the neutral. We checked the neutral indicator, that worked. Checked the kickstand switch, which checked out good too.
Verified the clutch safety switch was working.
Clutch safety switch right here.
I'm going to add one note for the clutch safety switch, guys, on this. That actually provides the ground to the starter solenoid. We verified him. I had Sullivan pull the clutch in and watch continuity to ground break and close when he pulled the clutch handle. Because on these bikes, you have to have the clutch in to crank it over.
Yep.
So that provides the ground signal to the starter solenoid, and we were just lacking that power signal. So then I had the master mechanic go at it, and he sort of traced her down. And
yeah, so it's really, we rattled ourselves on the wiring diagram quite a lot because the starting system is hooked to a lot of different shit. Instead of having like one or two things, I think there's like 4 or 5 systems that were hooked to actually starting the bike.
Yep.
So what we came to find out is that this right here is unplugged. This right here is the alarm control unit, not the alarm control accessory. This is the alarm control unit. So these wires are butt connector crimped together because you need to jump 1 and 2, 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 to get the bike to start. They make jumper plugs, but they are pretty much MIA to find online. So what we did is just cut the wires back a little bit, as you can see, and just splice them together. I'll heat up that heat shrink and kind of form that on there. But this is the 12-pin alarm bypass, and you could buy a Triumph alarm system for them and then hook them up. But a lot of guys say that they come with jumper plugs in them, and I noticed that it didn't have that. It didn't have a jumper plug. So what I did is I have 2 little coiled over wires that I just kind of shoved in the sockets, and it cranked up. I got my neutral light on the dash, and it cranked, it cranked over. So then I was like, all right, I kind of cycled it a few times, try to crank it.
And mind you, the fuel pump was also not running with this either.
Yeah, nothing. You turn on the key, no noises, no nothing, not a noise when you hit the starter button even. So, another thing I noticed right away was that it had a different color fuse. It had it was more of a bright green.
Napa style.
Yeah, instead of like the darkish green that it has here, like an olive almost.
Oh yeah.
So I noticed that too, and that was funny because the fuse block little cover is broke too. So I knew that they were messing around with the fuses, and I checked them all right away to see if there was any breaks in the fuses or anything like that, and it all checked out good. But obviously, I believe this is your that's to hook up like a reader to it, a code reader, how you send new maps to the ECU, I want to say. So got that jumped, and we got to run. But when it ran, I mean, it wouldn't idle. It took a while to fire up, but it would run good past 3,000 RPMs, but the dash still wouldn't hold. The RPM gauge would just flicker up and down, and it was still just not running good at all. So did some more jockeying around, and I took the tank off, took the airbox off.
And then what'd you fix under
the... This guy right here disconnected the DynoJet Power Commander 3 PC3. All this is a fuel tuner, hooks into your injectors, and basically just adds a little connector to the injectors, and that sends your signal then instead of the ECU or the ECM. Has a little jumper wire that goes on the TPS. Green, I think it's the lime green and yellow wire that hooks to. So yeah, took that out because they're like, well, eliminate that from the situation right away, because I heard bad things about the power commanders. Everyone says tune boy or tune ECU on the Triumph stuff. So trace that down. Spike comes up here. Spike to the rescue.
Hell yeah.
I was like, I read a lot of stuff online how it's a closed loop system and that the O2, if the O2 is acting up, it'll run crappy. About 3,000 RPMs and below, in which that was kind of the situation that I had, because it would run like $1 million. You got it 3.5, 4, 5, it just ran great then. So he came over here, disconnected the O2, or just unplugged the O2.
Here we unplugged the connector. It's a Deutsch connector.
Which is this guy right here.
Right up in there.
Which adds
can't really see it,
terrible
but
routing too. It routes down and around the
Down
bike.
and around the case, by the exhaust. It's just like, oh boy.
And let's not mention that the horn wires were like rubbing through the bracket, the mounting bracket.
Almost rubbed through here. So we untangle this, so we got some clearance. We can always tidy this up and put some conduit,
black tape or
loom over that.
But yeah, so we unplugged that and it ran terrible. I mean, it wouldn't even run. So I'm like, dude, I know this thing ran better than that. So we're like, all right, eliminate the O2 from the situation. Then he just kind of tugged on some wires and it started running good. Well, we did run an external ground from, I believe it was right
the engine
here,
block,
the engine block to the battery. And I don't think that really did anything because it fell off and it was running good still. And he had just tugged a few wires kind of. And then as he was tugging wires, he felt right about here, which is the wires that come out of the stator loom. And it had a new stator, guys, mind you. That was a red flag number one for me. Previous owner. So what we did is we're like, all right, well, that's hot. And then we traced that back. The wires on the RR, the regular rectifier, were also warm. These yellows,
AC
in particular,
input from the stator.
The ground and the power weren't as bad.
No, they weren't hot or anything.
But this connector, that's why they're zip tied, is they have a lot of play in them, and a lot of guys say they splice and wire them direct, because when that gets play in there, it can kind of arc.
Yep.
And then that'll obviously create
heat.
lots of heat.
Yep. Resistance.
So, and that would push that back through the wires and kind of bounce it back down to the stator. So,
we assume they cook the stator.
we assume they cooked the stator because they have a new one in it. Right. But this is the factory regulator rectifier. We found out a few reasons, because it's gray in color and the plugs are black. All of the ones online that I saw, like a Caltrick or any of the other brands, were a white plug, or it was black with a dark black tone of color on the RR.
So we're thinking, guys, is they replaced the stator, didn't replace the voltage regulator rectifier. Because what we found out is, what did we find out? Why is the regulator bad?
She is not charging, guys.
Not charging the battery.
It was, and it cranked my interstate battery from another thing we won't discuss.
Yeah, another bike, but
it cranked it dead. And then he hooked up the DMM to it, and 11.4.
While running, not charging.
While running. And it should be, a lot of guys say like 14.2 without the headlights, or 14.5.7 with them off. So, we also blew...
Going back to that fuse that we saw.
Back to that fuse that I saw right away. Blew the 30 amp fuse, which goes to...
Charging.
The charging.
Well, it actually, your power from the output of the regulator flows through the fuse to charge the battery.
Correct.
So we replaced the fuse and it still wasn't charging. We assume, because I'm getting power, battery power here. I checked the ground to make sure the voltage regulator rectifier had a good ground. It does. So the only thing, if the regulator rectifier doesn't fix it, which I think it's going to fix it. Maybe something, because this socket is kind of melted where that fuse goes. Not melted, but heat has definitely been there.
It's got that marshmallow color, like when you're roasting a marshmallow, just a little bit of browned up.
So we have a regulator on order. What the only thing is, if we don't get charging still after replacing it, we'll trace. There's got to be something small.
We're going to have to cut back the more than likely to cut back the harness.
And then there's got to be a broken or a melted connection. But I think we'll have it licked.
Because that fuse was popped, I don't think anything's too bad.
Fuse is the safety link.
Fuse is your last resort. That pops, and then that'll cut that.
And to pop a 30 amp fuse, you have to have
takes
some
a lot of
serious
juice.
issues going on.
It takes a lot of juice. A 10 amp or a 5 amp, that's like nothing.
Right.
But
And it was a clean pop, it wasn't melted.
exactly, clean break right.
And when he first got the bike, he did verify every fuse was good at that time.
I did.
We ran it a little longer today,
Yeah.
probably longer than it's ever ran, and the fuse is blown.
And
So
the previous owner that I bought it from said that like randomly it just kind of started running rough, which could have been a result of this connector bobbing around, right? And then getting loose and arcing like we kind of stated earlier, and then that would fry the stator. And then in that case, you know, it was running rough. That's why the charging system couldn't power the EFI unit well enough.
I'm thinking
so. That's
so.
why it ran pardon my French, shitty and low RPMs. So that's what we think. We will obviously pick up when
regulator comes in.
we get the new regulator in. But hopefully, fingers crossed.
That
I mean,
takes care.
Sparky wants to buy this thing, so hopefully it'll turn out. It's only got 15,000 miles on it, which is really low for a sport bike. Of this
And it's a
size.
1000 cc rocket, so you know she's quick.
And this thing is like, I think it's 161 factory top speed.
Yeah.
Out of the I'm talking out of
Stock.
England.
Right out of
Those guys are fresh out the garage, mate. I'm talking rip-ems.
Yep. So we will verify charging after the new regulator shows up. Like I said, I highly doubt we're going to have any issues. I've diagnosed plenty of regulator rectifiers in the past, and it's always been pretty good in my diagnostics. Not saying, like I said, this is a little skeptical with that fuse block, but nothing we can't fix in the long run.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think it's going to be one hell of a machine when this thing gets fixed.
Yep. And you did
Obviously-
fix. You told them about you fixing the O-rings on the fittings.
Yes. So there was a recall for these fittings here, these plastics, but they are actually metal now, so they did replace them. They must have did the recall or maybe just got new ones on their own. But it was leaking right down here, and it almost looked like the tank was punctured because it was running down and was dripping over here.
Yep.
So what I did, they're really easy. They're quick connects. This little tab right here, you push that in, and that releases it. But if you don't keep it held in the whole way out, you'll scratch that O-ring coming out, and you'll tear it. So I just replaced it. I got the kits sitting up
Yep.
there
The old
still.
cheapo kits.
But I just put a new one on both. I mean, it didn't need it on the other one. It was just leaking from one. But I figured, while I'm doing it, might as well do both. So I replaced those. Hasn't leaked since because it would only when you turn the key on, the fuel pump would run, and it would shoot out, and it would obviously keep going out. But when it was stationary, it wouldn't. So other than that, I undid this zip tie because I was messing with the wiring harness, switching batteries, and I would always mess up my jumper wires. And let me tell you how much of a son of a gun it is to put that airbox on when those boots are so rolled over. What I did, guys, if you ever need to get the airbags back on these things, the boots that connect to your throttle body, you need to roll the springs because it's just got those, they're already preset springs. There's no adjustment. There's the coil springs on there. You got to roll them up farther on the boot so it doesn't put tension on the part that connects right away.
Right.
And then you really gotta shove that airbox down pretty hard. You gotta make sure it's in the upper hanger first. It pushes forward, and then there's two bolts that go in from the back. You gotta smush it down, make sure to watch. You gotta watch through, obviously the tank wouldn't be here, but you watch through this little entrance here and over on this side. And I'm talking, you gotta do some serious blood flow to the head, because you gotta be like down there like that and looking at it while you're wrenching this thing. But yeah, I managed to get in. I had to use a little pick to kind of peel the edge around, and then I used the pick to pull the spring down back on the socket. But other than that, I didn't really have many issues with other than that. It's actually a pretty simple bike to work on for the most part.
Yeah.
Because the fairings are like 5 bolts each side, and they all come off.
All the fairings are right here.
The back was a little more of a biatch because you have to pull it around this rear freaking metal rack back here, alloy rack. So that was a little more difficult, but we got it off. I mean, I don't know where the plastic. I think they're on the back.
Well, they're right here, most of them.
But yeah, I mean, this thing looks sick. I mean, I would
Yeah.
love to get a high-rise pipe for it, but I think I'm just gonna leave it stock and
hope for the best. So yeah, like I said, it's a project bike. We got it for a dirty steel, low mileage. That's kind of some electrical diagnostics we did. If you guys are having issues with any sort of, I don't know, neutral light issues or no power to the fuel pump, obviously we did check. You can see we labeled the relays. We did have relays out, inspected, swapped a few, I think.
Number 3 is a 5-pin. It's got the central. I don't even think it's a central ground. The central one really doesn't. I don't know if it's a ground or power, but it has a central, and then obviously It's got 1,
Constant
2,
and then
3,
a couple
4.
grounds.
And then these are all 4-pin relays.
And then this one here is also a relay, right?
Yep, that's the ignition relay.
Ignition relay.
So a lot of people say that you're not supposed to replace them with automotive fuse, just not your Joe Schmo Blow AutoZone fuse block. They say to use Triumph OEMs just because they're a little better rated.
Sure.
But
yeah, that was not our issue,
That was
guys.
not
It was
the
the
issue.
alarm. So that's why we bypassed that, and we left the wires cut back just enough in case they're connected ever in the future. But that's what got us power and running, and then now we're going to fix the charging system, and hopefully we're golden.
And the reason why you connect 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 is because 1 and 3 are already externally linked together, so that completes both loops. So it 1 and 2 jumps that loop, and then 3 and 5
When I looked at the
jumps.
circuit online, guys, looked at the wiring diagram, 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 need to be connected for power to flow to or out of one of the relays. I checked the
I
diagram,
think it's
guys.
the ignition relay. Or,
And it
or the
made-
headlight cut. It might be the headlight
It
cut.
made a total sense of why he did it, because I looked in the diagram and they had to be connected. Those 4 pin, 1 and 2, 3 and 5 had to be connected to have power flow through to either go to a relay or from a relay, and then it went obviously and triggered your starter solenoid and powered up everything else. So
Because I'm telling you how hard it was to even get a picture under a seat of one of these things. It was so hard to just even get a picture of a view like this. And then when
Right.
I saw that there was a jumper plug with 2 bunny loops on it, I was like, well, I don't have that. So, and then I looked at it. It was the same exact connector, 12 pin, 5 on top, 7 on the bottom.
yep.
So other than that, I mean, hopefully this thing should be golden. I mean, it's a low mileage unit. I'm going to change oil and stuff right away. I probably should have looked at the air filter while I had the air box out, but that's for another day.
Next time.
Next year.
Alrighty, guys, we'll keep you in the loop when we get parts, and keep at her. But cool, it's one of our first European bikes, and just something different. We do a lot of snowmobiles, so motorcycles on the channel is kind of unheard of. But we do work on pretty much everything. So other than that, we'll keep you updated. We'll see you in the next video.